So, hey, it's me, Jamal Oaks. I'm in your class. Here's me. I don't know. I'll make it better or something like that so you can actually know it's me. Okay. So, now that that's out of the way, what I'm talking about is the media influences on Chapter 6 of Toxic Families and Cultures. And what's fascinating about this and everything is how, like, not even just media influence, is how, like, kids will grow up and have something to do with violence or any type of, like, violent activities that can be done onto them or they see and react. It's kind of like monkey see, monkey do, if there's a way to think of it. And so the media influences that I can think of are based on here are direct action, desensitization, and mean world syndrome. And I'm going to be going over each one of these periodically throughout. But first, to like really understand everything, first we gotta look at media. And media by itself is like TVs, games, movies, basically anything that has I guess you can say a digital essence to it. So, for example, two kids are watching TV. One kid is watching some PG show like Elmo's World, and the other kid is watching Mortal Kombat. There's a huge difference there in what they're watching. One of them is grotesquely violent, and the other one is mainly all about peace and love and everything. So, in looking at that, you can see like a clear difference in what's going on and how that can influence a young child's mind. And so that's where we go straight into direct action. So, direct action is like when children are like pretending to be characters on TV, and you know they'll start to do everything else that the character will do. For example, when I was a kid, I used to love watching those like terrible kung fu movies, and I had like a little brother. So what would I do? I would practice those cheesy kung fu movies on my brother. That's an example of direct action. So whenever a little kid will watch a TV show that's kind of violent or something in that nature, they'll see it as like kind of acceptable, and they'll start to do that action as well. Usually this results in like children being very physical or verbal in the playground, and that's not okay. Playground or at school, for that matter. The next issue we're going to talk about that follows that train is desensitization. Now this one is kind of like when the child has like became less sensitive to the violence and stuff around them in that category of movies and violence and everything. They just kind of becomes used to it. Like it doesn't really faze them anymore because they're that used to it, which hence desensitization to it. So as a rather than like having thoughts and thinking like, wow, this is really bad, they're kind of just not even looking or thinking too much into it. Another example I could think of is like when I was a kid, or actually no, when I was a little bit older, let's say I was 8 years old and I was watching like a scary movie. And, you know, I see my first scary movie, oh, it was really terrible, I'm scared and everything. And let's say I just keep on watching scary movies after scary movies, and by the time I turn 14, scary movies don't really affect me anymore, and all the grotesque killing scenes are kind of like, okay. In fact, the next issue we're about to go into kind of ties along into that, because it can actually be the inverse of like being used to it. So as opposed to just being used to it, in the mean world syndrome, children may become like more fearful of the world. So they'll see something on TV and they'll just be like hyper aware of it to the point that, you know, they're just completely terrified of it. And they'll see the world as like a completely dangerous place. And, you know, they'll never really have complete peace because they're so terrified of like what they're seeing. So it's kind of like worrying just gone 10 times worse. So that's another example of how the media can influence what's going on. More influence can come from like the example of there was a kid Ronnie Zamora. So in his case, he was on trial for killing his neighbor, and the way he did it, he said he blames TV and culture because that's where he got the idea from and everything. And when they looked at the surveillance of him committing this crime and everything, and the way he actually did commit his crime, it looked very familiar to what they saw. On to how the TV program looked and how he actually killed the neighbor. Safe to say that his plea did not go well because he still got charged with it, but it did raise an essence of like, wow, this is TV and how it's like reinforcing terrible negative thoughts. Another example is like, for example, X-rated films. But those cases, males perceive like females and their behaviors as like being over sexual and everything. So, for example, if a woman is just being friendly to a guy that's just focused only on X-rated content, her friendliness might be seen as like some kind of sexual advance, which will then not be good because now he's going after her, and which is pretty much like sexual assault and everything like that. Overall, media and violence, it's a part of our culture, and it's definitely not good. But I think it believes in like moderation, and also it's a take form in like what age is okay for your child to like actually watch something that's violent. Because in most of our TV shows today, whether it's like cartoons or something, there's always some kind of problem, and there's usually some type of like violence in it. Maybe it's harmful violence like Looney Tunes, or it could be just pure violence like Dexter or something. But either way, there is violence, and we have to like learn how to moderate it and not glorify it, but just kind of like just moderate it for children to watch. And once they get to a certain age, they should actually start watching it. So, me personally, I say a child should like start watching something violent if it's okay, like by the age of 12 or 14. That's when you should really like watch something violent, and not even like for too long, because everything needs moderation. So, that was my issue on media influence on children on Chapter 6, Toxic Families and Cultures. And I believe that media influence does have a huge connection in kids being violent and how it shapes them later on. My name is Jamal Oaks, and thank you.